Admiral Hyunwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the New Seoul, watching the stars through the massive viewport. The ship was huge, almost like a floating city. It had everything needed for long space travels, homes for families, schools for children, and markets where people traded goods from different worlds. Hyunwoo had spent 30 years building peace between humans and aliens. His gray hair showed his age, but his eyes still burned with passion for his work. The Human Federation now had friendly relations with over 200 different alien species. Trade ships moved safely between worlds. Diplomats solved problems, with words instead of weapons. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Soo-jin from her station. "We have a message from Captain Park on the Harmony." Hyunwoo walked to the communication center. Captain So-min Park appeared on the screen. She was younger than him, with short black hair and intelligent eyes. Her ship, the Harmony, was exploring new star systems far from human space. "Admiral, we found something amazing," So-min said. Her voice carried excitement. "The fourth planet in the Kepler 442 system has ruins, ancient buildings, maybe 50,000 years old." Hyunwoo leaned forward. "Any signs of the builders?" "No, sir. They are all gone. But the ruins are beautiful. Tall towers that shine in the sunlight. Gardens that still grow after all these years. Dr. Mi-young says she has never seen anything like it." Dr. Mi-young Choi was the best alien archaeologist in the Federation. If she was excited about these ruins, they must be very special. "Keep studying the site," Hyunwoo ordered. "And be careful. We don't know why this species disappeared." So-min nodded. "Understood, Admiral. Park out." The screen went dark. Hyunwoo looked back at the stars. In his years of service, he had learned that empty worlds often had sad stories. Species died from disease, war, or natural disasters. But sometimes they vanished for reasons no one could explain. 3 days later, Hyunwoo received a different kind of message. This one came from Colonial Administrator Jae-sung Lee on New Busan, a frontier world near the edge of human space. Jae-sung looked worried. His usually neat appearance was messy, like he had not slept in days. "Admiral, we have a serious problem. 7 colonies in Sector 12 have stopped responding. No radio signals, no transport ships, nothing." Hyunwoo felt ice form in his stomach. "When did this start?" 4 days ago. The colony on Bright Hope went silent first. Then Green Valley, New Tokyo, and the others. We sent scout ships, but they haven't returned either. Could it be equipment failure, solar storms? Jae-sung shook his head. "All 7 worlds at the same time?" "No, sir. This is something else. I'm organizing evacuations for the remaining colonies in that sector." After the call ended, Hyunwoo called his senior officers to the meeting room. Commander Dong-hyun Nam from military intelligence arrived first. He was a thin man with sharp eyes who noticed everything. "What do you think happened to those colonies?" Hyunwoo asked. Dong-hyun pulled up a star map on the table screen. "The missing colonies form a perfect line through space. Whatever hit them moved with purpose, not randomly." "Pirates?" "Pirates would take valuable things and leave. They wouldn't make entire worlds go silent. This looks like extermination." The word hung in the air like a dark cloud. Hyunwoo had fought in border wars when he was young. He knew what extermination looked like, but this was different. The missing worlds were spread across hundreds of light years. No known enemy had that kind of power. Captain So-min Park's voice suddenly came through the communication system. "Admiral, emergency message from the Harmony. We need to talk right now." So-min appeared on screen again, but this time she looked frightened. Behind her, Dr. Mi-young Choi was working frantically at a computer terminal. "Admiral, we translated more of the ancient writing. The people here called themselves the Veltar. They left warnings carved in stone all over their cities." "Warnings? About what?" Dr. Mi-young looked up from her computer. Her face was pale. "About something they called the Silent Reapers. According to their records, these Reapers come every 50,000 years to cleanse the galaxy of organic life." Hyunwoo felt his blood turn cold. "Cleanse? They kill everything that lives and breathes," Dr. Mi-young continued. "The Veltar tried to hide, tried to fight, tried to run. Nothing worked. The Reapers found them all. So-Min stepped closer to the camera. Admiral, the Veltar writings say the Reapers just returned to this part of the galaxy. If they're right, then what? Happened to our colonies, and she didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. Get back to Federation space immediately, Hyunwoo ordered. Bring all the data you can carry. Yes, sir. But Admiral, there's one more thing. We found a Veltar telescope still working in their main observatory. It's been taking pictures of space for 50,000 years. The last images show ships approaching their world. Ships made of crystal. 2 hours later, a damaged probe appeared at the edge of human space. It was barely working, its hull melted and cracked. The probe had been sent to investigate the silent colonies. Dong-hyun and his team worked for hours to recover the probe's data. Most of it was destroyed, but they managed to save one video file. The senior officers gathered to watch it. The video was shaky and full of static. It showed a peaceful human colony from orbit. Green fields, blue rivers, and small cities dotted the landscape. Then shadows fell across the land. Massive ships appeared in the sky. They looked like they were carved from giant crystals, beautiful and terrible at the same time. The ships were huge, each one bigger than a human city. Light poured from them in focused beams. Where the beams touched the ground, everything died. Plants withered, animals collapsed, the rivers turned black, even the air seemed to burn. Within hours, the living world became a dead rock floating in space. The probe's camera kept recording as one crystal ship turned toward it. The screen filled with blinding light, then went black. The meeting room was silent for a long time. Finally, Dong-hyun spoke. 67 million people lived on those 7 worlds. Hyunwoo closed his eyes. In his 30 years of keeping peace, he had never seen anything like this. The crystal ships had destroyed 7 worlds without even trying to communicate. No warnings, no demands, no negotiations. Just death. Sir, Lieutenant Soo-jin called from the bridge. Long-range sensors are detecting movement in Sector 12. Multiple large objects heading toward our space. Hyunwoo opened his eyes. The Silent Reapers were coming for humanity. After 50,000 years of sleep, they had awakened to continue their terrible work. He looked around the room at his officers. These were good people who had spent their lives building peace and friendship between species. Now they would have to prepare for a war unlike any humanity had ever faced. Send messages to all Federation worlds, he ordered. Tell them to prepare their defenses, and get me a line to Earth. The President needs to know that humanity's age of peace is ending. As alarms began to sound throughout the ship, Hyunwoo thought about the Veltar warnings carved in stone. The ancient people had tried everything to survive the Silent Reapers, but they had failed. Their beautiful cities now lay empty under alien stars. Would humanity suffer the same fate? Or would they find a way to fight back against an enemy that had already destroyed countless worlds? The crystal ships were coming, and soon humanity would learn the answer. The crystal ships had a name. They called themselves the Keth Mori, which meant eternal cleaners in their ancient language. Dr. Mi-young Choi discovered this while studying more Veltar ruins. The dead aliens had learned much about their killers before they died. According to the stone tablets, the Keth Mori believed organic life was a disease that infected the universe. They saw flesh, blood, and growing things as dirt that needed to be scrubbed away. For millions of years, they had traveled from galaxy to galaxy, leaving only clean, empty worlds behind. Captain So-min Park stood in the main temple of the Veltar city. Her team had been working day and night to translate the ancient warnings. The building was made of smooth white stone that glowed softly in the dark. Beautiful carvings covered every wall, telling the story of a peaceful people who loved art and music. Captain, Dr. Mi-young called from across the room. I found something important. So-min walked over to where the scientist was kneeling beside a large stone panel. The carving showed tall crystal beings standing over smaller organic creatures. But these crystals looked different from the others. They seemed sad somehow. What, does it say? So-min asked. The Veltar met some Keth Mori who were different. These crystals remembered being alive once, long ago. They had been organic beings who chose to become crystals to avoid death. But in becoming eternal, They lost the ability to grow, to change, to feel joy. Dr. Myung traced the ancient writing with her finger. These different Kethmori warned the Veltar that the main fleet was coming. They said the Crystal Empire could not tolerate any reminder of the life they had given up. That's why they destroy everything organic. Somin felt a chill run down her spine. Did any of these different ones survive? The tablet is damaged here. I can't read the ending. Meanwhile, back in human space, Admiral Hyunwoo Kim was preparing for first contact with the Kethmori. Despite what happened to the colonies, the Federation still believed in trying diplomacy first. It was the human way. Ambassador Yun-Ho Kang was chosen to lead the diplomatic mission. He was an old man with white hair and kind eyes who had made peace between dozens of alien species. If anyone could talk to the Kethmori, it would be him. Admiral, I understand the risk, Yun-Ho said as they met in Hyunwoo's office, but we must try. Maybe they don't know we're intelligent. Maybe they think our colonies were empty. Hyunwoo shook his head. The probe data shows they targeted cities, schools, hospitals. They knew exactly what they were destroying. Then maybe they had a reason we don't understand. Every species we've met can be reasoned with, even the most aggressive ones. There has to be something the Kethmori want that we can give them. Yun-Ho's ship, the Olive Branch, was humanity's most beautiful diplomatic vessel. It was painted white and gold with no weapons visible on its hull. The ship carried 300 diplomats, translators, and cultural experts. They brought gifts from every human world: art, music, literature, and samples of human technology. The meeting was arranged in neutral space halfway between human territory and the advancing Kethmori fleet. The Olive Branch waited there for 2 days before the crystal ships arrived. The Kethmori sent one vessel to meet them. It was smaller than the world killers that had destroyed the colonies, but still massive. The ship looked like a giant diamond carved into the shape of a flower. Beautiful lights moved inside its crystal walls like trapped lightning. Captain Woo Jin-ha commanded the Guardian, the military escort ship hiding nearby. His orders were to stay hidden unless the diplomats were attacked. He watched through his telescope as the two ships came together. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the crystal ship is sending a signal. It's not like any language we know. It sounds like music." The Kethmori representative came aboard the Olive Branch in a shuttle that looked like it was made of living glass. The being itself was 12 feet tall and shaped roughly like a human, but made entirely of transparent crystal. Lights pulsed inside its body like a slow heartbeat. When it spoke, the sound came from vibrations in its crystal form, creating haunting melodies. Ambassador Yun-Ho met the creature in the main conference room. Jin Song, his young assistant, stood beside him with recording equipment. The room had been decorated with flowers and art from many worlds to show humanity's love of beauty and life. The Kethmori looked around the room for a long moment. When its eyes fell on a small flowering plant, the lights inside its body pulsed, faster, almost angrily. "I am Yun-Ho Kang, representing the Human Federation," the ambassador began. "We come in peace, hoping to understand your people and find common ground." The crystal being's response was a complex series of musical tones. The translation computers worked frantically to decode the meaning. After several minutes, words appeared on the screen. "Organic contamination spreads through this sector. Your species' expansion ends here. Withdraw beyond the barrier nebula or face extinction." Yun-Ho remained calm. He had heard worse threats from other aliens and always found a way to make peace. "We don't want to fight. Our colonies are peaceful. We trade, we learn, we explore. We could share our knowledge with your people." The Kethmori's reply came faster this time. "Knowledge is corruption. Growth is disease. Your flesh thoughts poison the clean spaces between stars. You have 30 cycles to evacuate 47 systems. After that, cleansing begins." 30 days? That's not enough time to move millions of people. Please, there must be another way. Jin Song watched nervously as the lights in the crystal being's body began pulsing much faster. The beautiful music of its voice became harsh and discordant. "There is no other way. Organic life cannot be permitted to spread. Your species chose expansion over extinction. This choice is unacceptable. Ambassador Yunho tried everything he had learned in 40 years of diplomacy. He offered technology sharing, cultural exchange, and territorial agreements. He spoke about the beauty of diversity and the value of different perspectives. He even offered to limit human expansion to specific sectors. The Kethmori listened to it all with perfect stillness. When Yunho finished, the crystal being stood up. Its body now glowed so brightly it was almost painful to look at. Your words confirm the contamination has spread to your thoughts. You speak of growth, change, adaptation. These concepts are the source of all suffering in the universe. We ended our own suffering by choosing perfection over chaos. Now we will end yours. The crystal being moved toward the door, but Yunho stepped in front of it. Wait. I know your people were once organic like us, the Veltar ruins told us. You chose to become crystal to escape death, but you also escaped life. Is a perfect universe worth having if nothing in it can grow or dream or love? For a moment, the Kethmori stopped. The lights inside its body dimmed, and its voice became softer. Love, we remember that word. It was the source of our greatest pain. When love ends in loss, the suffering is unbearable. We chose to end suffering by ending the ability to feel. But without feeling, what's the point of existing at all? The crystal being's light suddenly blazed brighter than ever. The point is order. The point is cleanliness. The point is the elimination of chaos. The Kethmori walked past Yunho and left the ship. Within minutes, its shuttle had returned to the crystal vessel. Jin-A-Song watched through the viewport as the alien ship began to glow. Sir? She called urgently. I think we should leave. Now. But it was too late. The crystal ship fired a beam of pure energy that cut through the olive branch like it was made of paper. The diplomatic vessel exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from light years away. Captain Wu Jin-Ha watched in horror from the Guardian. His ship's sensors detected no survivors. 300 of humanity's best diplomats were dead, killed without warning after trying to make peace. The Kethmori ship turned toward him, and Wu Jin realized he was next. All power to engines, he ordered. Emergency jump to Earth. Guardian barely escaped as more crystal ships appeared from hyperspace. Wu Jin's last sensor reading showed over 1,000 enemy vessels moving toward human space. Jin-A-Song floated in an escape pod, one of only 12 people who survived. The olive branch's destruction. Through her pod's tiny window, she watched the crystal ships form into a perfect formation. They moved like dancers in a deadly ballet, heading toward the first human worlds. The 30-day countdown had begun. In 1 month, if humanity hadn't abandoned 47 star systems, the Kethmori would begin their cleansing. But now everyone knew that evacuation would only delay the inevitable. The crystal beings wouldn't stop until every human was dead and every human world was sterile. As rescue ships arrived to collect the escape pods, Jinny sent an emergency message to Admiral Hyunwoo Kim. Diplomacy has failed. The Kethmori cannot be reasoned with. They see us as a disease that must be cured. Recommend immediate military response. The age of human expansion through peace and trade was ending. The age of war was about to begin. President Da Yoon sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the capital city of Seoul on Earth. The room was filled with holographic displays showing the positions of human colonies, military fleets, and the advancing Kethmori forces. Red dots marked the worlds that had already gone silent. The red was spreading like a disease across the map. How many people live in the 47 systems they want us to abandon? She asked. General Kyung-Soo Park, the head of military operations, looked at his data pad. Approximately 230 million civilians, Madam President, plus military personnel and support staff. Da-Yoon closed her eyes. She was a small woman with gray-streaked hair who had spent her political career avoiding wars. Now she faced a choice that could doom humanity or save it. How many ships do we have for evacuation? Not enough, General Park admitted. Even if we used every transport in the Federation, We could only move about half the people in 30 days, and that's assuming the Kethmori don't attack during the evacuation. Admiral Hyunwoo Kim appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from his flagship. Madam President, I don't think evacuation will save us. The Kethmori made it clear they want to eliminate all human life, not just in those 47 systems. They're giving us time to evacuate because they enjoy the fear it creates. What do you recommend, Admiral? We fight. We make them pay for every world they take. Maybe we can hurt them badly enough that they decide humanity isn't worth the cost. Defense Minister Sang-wook Lee shook his head. Our best weapons couldn't even scratch their ships. How do we fight an enemy we can't hurt? Dr. Sun-woo Lim raised his hand. He was the director of Advanced Weapons Research, a quiet man with thick glasses who rarely spoke in meetings. Actually, we might have a chance. I've been studying the probe data from the destroyed colonies. The Kethmori ships aren't completely invulnerable. Everyone turned to look at him. Da-eun leaned forward. Explain. Their ships are made of crystalline matrices held together by specific resonance frequencies. If we could disrupt those frequencies, we might be able to damage them. It's like breaking a wine glass with a high-pitched sound but much more complex. General Park frowned. How long would it take to develop such weapons? If we dedicate every research facility to the project, maybe 6 months, maybe more. We don't have 6 months, Da-eun said quietly. We have 30 days before they start killing our people. Captain Tae-min Ryu had been listening silently from his position near the door. He commanded the stealth battlecruiser Indomitable, one of humanity's most advanced warships. Madam President, request permission to conduct reconnaissance missions in Kethmori space. We need to know more about their fleet composition and capabilities. Da-eun nodded. Granted. But be careful, Captain. We can't afford to lose any more. Good people. While the leaders debated strategy, the evacuations had already begun on the frontier worlds. Captain Yoonji Bae commanded the colonial militia on New Busan, one of the planets marked for cleansing. Her forces were trying to organize the departure of 3 million colonists with only enough ships for half that number. The spaceport was chaos. Families crowded around transport ships, desperate to get their children to safety. Many people had to leave everything behind except what they could carry. Farmers abandoned crops they had spent years growing. Artists left behind studios full of paintings and sculptures. Children cried for pets that couldn't come with them. Yoonji stood in the control tower coordinating the evacuation. She was a tough woman who had fought pirates and hostile aliens, but watching families being torn apart was harder than any battle she had faced. Captain, her communications officer called out. We have a problem. The transport ship New Hope is reporting engine failure. They're stuck in orbit with 8,000 civilians aboard. Send repair crews immediately. Ma'am, our engineers say it will take at least 6 hours to fix the engines. The last ships are supposed to leave in 4 hours. Yoonji looked out at the crowds of people still waiting for transport. 8,000 lives hung in the balance. If she delayed the evacuation to save them, the Kethmori might arrive early and kill everyone. If she left them behind, they would die when the cleansing began. Tell the New Hope to start emergency repairs. Route power from non-essential systems to the engines. We're not leaving anyone behind. Among the people waiting for evacuation was a family named Oh. Gi-tae-oh was 12 years old, traveling with his parents and younger sister. He carried a small flowering plant in a ceramic pot, the only thing he had been allowed to bring from their farm. His father, Min-guk Oh, was a botanist who had spent 20 years developing new crops for the colony. His mother, Hye-sun, was a teacher at the local school. They had built a good life on New Busan, and now they were losing it all because of an enemy they had never seen. Why do the crystal people want to hurt us? Gi-tae asked his father as they waited in line for a transport ship. Min-guk looked down at his son, trying to think of an answer that wouldn't terrify him. Some people think differently than we do, son. They don't understand that growing and changing can be beautiful. But my plant is beautiful, Gi-tae said, holding up the pot. The small flowers were bright yellow like tiny suns. Yes, it is. And maybe someday the crystal people will understand that too. High above the planet, Captain Taiman Ryu watched the evacuation through his ship's sensors. The Indomitable was invisible to most detection systems, but he knew the Kethmori had technology beyond human understanding. If they found him here, his ship wouldn't survive long enough to warn anyone. His mission was to observe the enemy fleet and gather intelligence. What he saw through his telescope made his blood run cold. The Kethmori had more than 1,000 ships, ranging from small fighters to massive world killers. They moved in perfect formation, like a crystal symphony playing a song of death. "Captain," his sensor officer reported, "the enemy fleet is accelerating. They'll reach New Busan in 6 hours, not the 12 we expected." Taman felt his heart sink. The evacuations weren't complete. Hundreds of thousands of people were still on the planet's surface, including his own cousin's family. But his orders were clear. Observe and report. Don't engage. He opened a communication channel to Captain Yunji. "This is the Indomitable. The Kethmori are coming early. You have 6 hours, not 12. On the surface, Yunji received the message, just as the New Hope's engines came back online. 6 hours. It wasn't enough time. Even if everything went perfectly, at least 50,000 people would still be on the planet when the crystal ships arrived. "All ships, immediate departure," she ordered. "Maximum capacity, safety regulations suspended. We're taking as many people as we can." The last few hours were a nightmare of desperate activity. Ships designed for 500 passengers took on 800. Cargo holds were converted into passenger compartments. Every available space was filled with human beings trying to escape death. Gitao and his family made it onto one of the last ships. As the transport lifted off from New Busan's surface, he pressed his face to a small window and watched his home grow smaller below. His plant sat in his lap, its yellow flowers bright against the darkness of space. The ship was overcrowded and uncomfortable, but at least they were alive. Gitai fell asleep holding his plant, dreaming of the farm where he had grown up. He woke up hours later to the sound of alarms. Through the window he could see New Busan again, but something was wrong. The planet's blue-green surface was turning gray. Clouds that had once been white were now black and poisonous. Crystal ships surrounded the world like predators around wounded prey. Beams of energy struck the surface, and everywhere they touched, life died. The forests his father had loved turned to ash. The cities where his friends lived became empty ruins. "Don't look," his mother said, pulling him away from the window. But it was too late. Gitai had seen his world die, and the image would stay with him forever. Captain Yunji stood on the bridge of the last evacuation ship watching the same terrible sight. They had saved most of New Busan's people, but the cost was everything they had built over 50 years of colonization. "Captain," her navigator said quietly, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. Someone's still down there." The voice that came through the radio was weak and filled with static. "This is Dr. Kim from the Biological Research Station. We stayed behind to destroy our files so the crystal things can't learn about our work. Tell Earth. Tell them we found something important. The plants here, some of them are adapting to the cleansing energy. Evolution doesn't stop, even when everything seems hopeless." The transmission cut off as another energy beam struck the research station. Dr. Kim and his team were gone, but their final message gave humanity its first hint of hope. Life found a way to survive even in the face of extinction. Maybe humanity would find a way too. Captain Taman Ryu watched the cleansing from his hidden position, recording everything for the intelligence analysts back on Earth. The Kethmori were thorough and methodical. They didn't just kill living things. They sterilized the entire planet, making sure nothing could ever grow there again. When it was over, New Busan was a dead rock floating in space. The crystal ships moved on toward their next target, leaving nothing behind but silence. Taemin closed his eyes and whispered a prayer for the dead. Then he set course for Admiral Hyunwoo Kim stood in the war room aboard his flagship, staring at the classified document that had just arrived from Earth. The Terran Protocol. He had hoped never to see this file again, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The protocol had been written during humanity's darkest period, when Earth was recovering from the Third Global War. It contained plans for total warfare, strategies that ignored every rule of civilized combat, every treaty about protecting civilians, every moral boundary that separated humans from monsters. "Sir," Commander Donghyun Nam said quietly, "the President is waiting for your decision." Hyunwoo looked around the room at his senior officers. These were good people who had spent their careers maintaining peace. Now he was about to ask them to abandon everything they believed in. "The Kethemori just destroyed 17 more colonies," he said. "That's over 100 million dead in the past week. They're not following any rules of war, so neither can we." He pressed his hand to the scanner that would authorize the protocol. Red lights began flashing throughout the ship as the most classified military secrets in human history were transmitted to every fleet commander. On the research station orbiting Mars, Dr. Sunwoo Lim worked frantically with his team to develop new weapons. They had been studying the Veltar ruins data about resonance frequencies for weeks without success. Every test had failed to produce any effect on crystalline materials. "Try increasing the amplitude by 30%, Dr. Sunwoo told his assistant, Kyungmin Shin. The young scientist adjusted the settings on their experimental device and fired it at a sample of Kethemori crystal they had recovered from a destroyed ship. The energy beam struck the crystal, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the sample began to vibrate slightly. "Sir," Kyungmin said excitedly, "look at the resonance readings." Dr. Sunwoo checked the instruments. The crystal's internal structure was showing stress fractures. It wasn't much, but it was the first time they had managed to affect Kethemori material at all. "We need more power," he said. "Much more power. And we need to find the exact frequency that will shatter their ship hulls." Captain Seung Ho Jang received his orders while his ship, the Retribution, was being refitted with humanity's first experimental harmony weapons. The weapons were crude and unreliable, but they were the only things that might hurt the crystal ships. His crew was made up of volunteers who knew they probably wouldn't survive their first battle. Most of them had lost family or friends to the Kethemori cleansing. They wanted revenge, even if it cost them their lives. "All stations report ready, Captain," his first officer announced. Seung Ho looked out at the Titan's Gate Nebula, where intelligence reported a Kethemori cleansing fleet was operating. Somewhere in that swirling cloud of gas and dust, crystal, ships were destroying human colonies. "Take us in," he ordered. "And remember, we only get one shot at this. Make it count." The Retribution moved silently through the nebula, its stealth systems hiding it from enemy sensors. The ship's computers had been replaced with mechanical systems, since the harmony weapons would destroy any crystalline electronics. The crew had to navigate by manual calculations like sailors on ancient Earth. They found the Kethemori fleet surrounding the colony world of Haven's Rest. 12 crystal ships hung in orbit like deadly jewels, their energy beams turning the planet's surface into a wasteland. The colony's 3 million inhabitants were already dead. "Harmony weapons charged and ready," the weapons officer reported. "Fire," Seung Ho commanded. The Retribution unleashed everything it had. Streams of resonance energy struck the nearest Kethemori ship, and something amazing happened. Cracks appeared in the crystal hull. The ship's perfect diamond structure began to shatter like glass hit by a hammer. The crystal ship exploded in a shower of brilliant fragments. For the first time since the war began, humanity had killed a Kethemori vessel, but victory came with a price. The harmony weapons had destroyed the Retribution's own systems as well as the enemy's. The ship was now dead in space, unable to move or defend itself. The remaining 11 crystal ships turned toward the human vessel like angry wasps. Energy beams lanced out, but Seung Ho's crew had expected this. They had sealed themselves into the ship's armored core with enough life support for a few hours. "Signal the fleet," Seung Ho ordered through the manual communication system. "Tell them the harmony weapons work. Tell them how we died." The message reached Admiral Hyunwoo just as he was meeting with a former peace activist named Hee-jin Ko. The war had changed many people, and Hee-jin was one of the most dramatic transformations. She had once organized protests against military spending. Now she was developing strategies to kill crystal beings more efficiently. "Admiral, I've been studying Kethmori behavior patterns," she said, spreading tactical displays across the conference table. "They think logically, like computers. They expect us to act rationally too. But humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to do crazy, unpredictable things." Yunwu looked at her plans. They were unlike anything in military textbooks. Instead of organized battles, Heejin proposed random attacks from unexpected directions. Instead of protecting valuable targets, she suggested using them as bait for traps. "They call it the chaos doctrine," she explained. "We stop fighting like an organized military and start fighting like a pack of wild animals. No patterns they can predict. No logic they can understand." "It could work," Hyunwoo admitted. "But it means accepting huge casualties. We'd be sacrificing entire fleets just to confuse them." "Admiral, they're already killing us faster than we can evacuate people. At least this way we make them pay for it." Dr. Yujin Moon was working on a different kind of warfare, psychological operations. Her job was to understand how the Kethmori thought, so humanity could find ways to hurt them emotionally as well as physically. "They're afraid," she reported to the military council. "It sounds strange to say about beings who destroy planets, but they're terrified of organic life. That's why they kill everything so thoroughly. They're not just eliminating threats, they're trying to erase reminders of what they used to be. This gave humanity a new weapon. Instead of just trying to kill crystal ships, human forces began broadcasting messages about growth, change, and evolution on frequencies the Kethmori could hear. They sent images of flowers blooming, children being born, and cities being built. Some crystal ships began behaving strangely after receiving these transmissions. Their formations became less perfect. Their attacks became less efficient. A few ships even stopped fighting altogether, drifting silently through space as if paralyzed by memories of their lost organic past. But the Kethmori leadership responded by accelerating their cleansing schedule. Instead of methodically destroying one world at a time, they began attacking multiple systems simultaneously. They also called for reinforcements from the galactic core, where billions more crystal ships waited in perfect formation. The war was escalating beyond anything either species had imagined. What had started as a simple cleansing operation was becoming the largest conflict in galactic history. Captain Taemin Ryu brought back intelligence that changed everything. His deep reconnaissance missions had discovered the true size of the Kethmori Empire. They controlled thousands of galaxies, each one stripped clean of organic life. Earth's Milky Way was just their latest target. "How many ships are we facing?" Admiral Hyunwoo asked during the classified briefing. "Conservative estimate? 10 billion vessels, possibly more." The room fell silent. Humanity had maybe 10,000 warships, and most of those were colony defense ships barely suitable for real combat. The numbers were so overwhelming that resistance seemed pointless. But Gi-tae, now living in a refugee camp on Earth, still tended his little plant. The yellow flowers had begun to change, adapting to the artificial environment of the space station. New colors appeared in the petals, deep blues and bright reds that had never existed in the original species. His father, Minguk, studied the plant with wonder. "It's evolving faster than should be possible," he told other botanist refugees. "The exposure to exotic energies during our escape from New Busan seems to have accelerated its genetic changes." Other refugees reported similar phenomena. Seeds brought from destroyed worlds were growing into new forms, better adapted to survive in the hostile conditions of refugee camps. Life was finding ways to continue even in the face of extinction. Dr. Sunwoo Lim visited the refugee camps to study these changes. What he found gave him hope for his weapons research. If simple plants could adapt so quickly to new conditions, maybe human technology could do the same. "We need to stop thinking of our ships as fixed designs," he told his research team. "We need to make them alive, capable of changing during battle." The concept seemed impossible, but then most of humanity's situation seemed impossible. They were fighting an enemy with overwhelming technological superiority and numerical advantage. Only by becoming something new could they hope to survive. In the depths of space, more Kethmori fleets were arriving from the galactic core. The crystal beings had decided that humanity represented a threat to their perfect universe. This infestation of chaotic organic life had to be completely eliminated. The war had consumed everything. 2 years after the first Kethmori attack, the galaxy burned with conflict unlike anything in its history. Entire star systems had become battlefields where crystal ships fought evolved human vessels in battles that could be seen from neighboring galaxies. Fleet Admiral Chang Wook Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, Eternal Defiance, preparing for Operation Shattered Mirror. He was Captain So Min Park's father, called back from retirement when the war began. His gray beard was now white, aged by the stress of commanding humanity's desperate resistance. The operation was humanity's largest offensive yet. 3,000 ships against the main Kethmori staging area in the Andromeda Transit Zone. If they could destroy the Crystal Empire's forward base, it might buy Earth enough time to develop better weapons. "Admiral, all fleets report ready," his communications officer announced. Chang Wook looked at the tactical display. 8,000 Kethmori ships waited for them in perfect crystalline formations. The enemy had learned from earlier battles and adapted their tactics, but so had humanity. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "All ships, execute Chaos Protocol 7. What followed was unlike any battle in military history. Instead of organized formations, human ships scattered in seemingly random directions. Some attacked the enemy's center while others struck from impossible angles. A few ships pretended to retreat, only to double back and attack again. The Kethmori tried to respond logically, but there was no logic to understand. Human commanders made decisions based on intuition, emotion, and pure random chance. It was insanity, but it worked. Dr. Hee-Young-An watched the battle from her laboratory ship, the Darwin. She had been working with Gi-Tai-O, now a young man of 15, to understand how his plant had survived the cleansing of New Busan. What they discovered changed everything. The plant didn't just survive the Kethmori energy, she explained to Admiral Chang Wook during a brief lull in the fighting. It absorbed it and used it to evolve new defensive mechanisms. We think we can apply the same principle to our ships. Gi-Tai stood beside her, now taller and more serious than the boy who had fled New Busan. His plant had grown too, becoming something beautiful and strange that no botanist could classify. Its flowers shifted colors based on the energy levels around it, and its roots had developed the ability to process almost any form of matter for nutrition. "Show him," Dr. Hee-Young said. Gi-Tai held up a piece of Kethmori crystal that had been damaged in battle. When he touched it to one of the plant's leaves, the crystal began to change. Its structure became softer, more organic, until it resembled living tissue more than mineral. "The plant can convert crystalline matter into organic compounds," Dr. Hee-Young explained. "If we can understand how it does this, we might be able to create ships that can actually digest enemy vessels during combat." The first living ship was called Evolution, and Captain Junsu Yang volunteered to command it. The vessel looked like a hybrid between a traditional spacecraft and a giant organism. Its hull was made of engineered biological materials that could repair damage in real time and adapt to new threats during battle. Yang's first mission was to attack a Kethmori worldship, a massive crystal construct the size of a small moon that served as a mobile base for cleansing operations. The worldship was protected by hundreds of smaller vessels and defensive energy fields that had destroyed every human ship that approached it. "Captain, we're entering weapons range," the Evolution's navigator reported. Unlike traditional ships, the Evolution's crew worked in partnership with the vessel's biological systems. The ship could think and feel, making decisions too fast for human minds to follow. The battle lasted 3 days. The Evolution and the Kethmori worldship fought like living creatures, each one adapting to the other's attacks in real time. When the crystal ship fired energy beams, the Evolution grew armor that absorbed the damage and converted it to fuel. When the worldship sent smaller ships to attack, the Evolution released its own organic fighters. creatures that looked like metallic butterflies but fought with the ferocity of sharks. Both ships changed during the battle, becoming more specialized for fighting each other. The world ship developed new weapons designed specifically to kill biological targets. The evolution grew new organs that could process different types of crystal matter. In the end, humanity's biological creativity proved superior to crystalline logic. The evolution literally ate parts of the world ship, converting crystal structures into organic materials that strengthened its own hull. The mighty Kethmori construct died like a wounded animal, its perfect geometry collapsing into twisted ruins. But victory came with a price. Captain Yang and his crew had been changed by their symbiotic relationship with the living ship. They were still human, but something more as well. Their reflexes had become faster, their minds more capable of processing complex information, their bodies better adapted to the stresses of space combat. "Are we still human?" Yang asked Dr. He Young when the evolution returned to base. "You're what humanity is becoming," she replied. "Evolution doesn't stop even in the middle of a war." The success of the living ships changed the nature of the conflict. Both sides began developing new technologies at an accelerated pace, each innovation spurring counter-innovations from the enemy. Kethmori ships became more adaptive, incorporating some biological elements into their crystal matrices. Human vessels became more integrated with their crews, creating hybrid beings that were part organic, part machine. Meanwhile, other alien species throughout the galaxy were choosing sides. The Kethmori had made enemies by cleansing several inhabited worlds that contained non-human life. Many species that had been neutral decided to join humanity's cause, realizing they would be next on the crystal beings list. Su Young Lee served as humanity's liaison to the growing alien coalition. She was a diplomat who had learned to fight, carrying both negotiation skills and battle scars from 2 years of war. Her job was to coordinate attacks between species with completely different fighting styles and technologies. "The Zephyrians want to attack the crystal mining worlds in Sector 7, she reported to Fleet Admiral Chang Wook. "The hegemony prefers to focus on disrupting their supply lines. The collective thinks we should try to capture a Kethmori command. Ship intact. What do you recommend?" Chang Wook asked. "All of it. The beauty of chaos doctrine is that we can do contradictory things simultaneously. Let each species fight the way they fight best." The coalition attacks were successful beyond anyone's expectations. While human ships adapted and evolved during battle, Zephyrian vessels used their superior speed to strike and vanish before the enemy could respond. Hegemony forces employed quantum weapons that could damage crystal ships from other dimensions. The collective sent swarms of tiny drone ships that overwhelmed Kethmori defenses through sheer numbers. But the enemy was adapting too. Intelligence reports brought disturbing news from the galactic core. The Kethmori were building something massive, a construct so large it could be seen from thousands of light-years away. Captain Taemin Ryu led a deep reconnaissance mission to investigate. His ship, the Indomitable, had been upgraded with biological components that made it nearly undetectable. When he reached the construction site, what he saw made him question whether humanity could win the war. The universal cleanser was the size of a small moon, but made entirely of crystal that pulsed with unimaginable energy. Thousands of Kethmori ships worked around it like cells in a vast organism, adding layers of complexity to its structure. "Sir," his science officer reported, "the energy readings are off the scale. That thing could sterilize every planet in a 10,000 light-year radius with a single pulse." Taemin recorded everything he could before retreating. The data he brought back showed that the Kethmori had decided to end the war quickly. Instead of slowly cleansing world after world, they would destroy all organic life in the entire local galaxy cluster with one massive weapon. The news reached Earth just as Dr. Mi-Young Choi made a final breakthrough in her study of the Veltar ruins. Deep beneath the ancient city, her archaeological team had found a chamber that had been sealed for 50,000 years. Inside was a weapon the Veltar called the Song of Ending, not a physical device, but a pattern of resonance frequencies that could unravel the quantum bonds holding Kethmori crystal matrices together. The ancient aliens had discovered it too late to save themselves, but they had preserved it for whoever might find it in the future. It's not just a weapon, Doctor, Mi-young explained to the Emergency War Council. It's a choice. The Song of Ending can destroy all crystalline structures in a given area, but it also disrupts the boundary between organic and inorganic matter. Using it might change both humans and Kethmori into something entirely new. Admiral Hyunwoo Kim, now promoted to Supreme Commander of all human forces, faced the hardest decision in history. What are the chances of successfully deploying this weapon against the Universal Cleanser? One ship would have to get close enough to broadcast the song directly into the construct's core, Dr. Mi-young replied. The pilot probably wouldn't survive, and we don't know what effects the song might have on nearby organic life. I'll do it, volunteered Captain Min-ho Choi, Dr. Mi-young's son. He commanded the stealth ship Silent Thunder, one of the Song of Ending filled space with frequencies that had not been heard for 50,000 years. As the ancient weapon resonated through the Universal Cleanser's crystal matrix, something impossible began to happen. The perfect geometric structure started to crack and bend, its crystalline perfection warping under the pressure of pure sonic chaos. Captain Min-ho Choi felt the vibrations pass through his body and into his mind. The plant beside him pulsed with sympathetic energy, its roots extending into the ship's biological systems. Through this connection, he could sense something extraordinary happening inside the massive Kethmori construct. The crystal beings manning the weapon were not dying. They were changing. Captain, his communications officer called out, I'm receiving transmissions from inside the cleanser. They're in our language. The voice that came through the speakers was like wind chimes in a storm, musical, but filled with confusion and pain. What is happening to us? We remember. Min-ho realized that the Song of Ending was not just destroying the Kethmori's crystalline forms. It was awakening the organic memories they had buried when they chose eternal perfection over mortal life. Deep inside their crystal bodies, traces of their original biological nature were stirring back to life. This is Captain Min-ho of the human vessel Silent Thunder, he broadcast back. You don't have to be crystals anymore. You can choose to live again. The response came from what must have been the Kethmori overmind, the collective consciousness that controlled their entire empire. Its voice was a symphony of harmonies, but now it carried emotions that had been absent for millions of years. Remember, we were like you once. We felt joy and sorrow, love and loss, but the pain of mortality became unbearable. We chose perfection to escape suffering. But in choosing perfection, you also chose emptiness, Min-ho replied. The plant's flowers were now blazing so brightly they lit up the entire bridge. Through its connection to the ship, he could feel the life force of every organic being in the battle. Yes, the Overmind whispered. For eons we have existed without growth, without change, without hope. We tried to eliminate all organic life because it reminded us of what we had lost. But you humans, you refuse to surrender. You adapt, you evolve, you become more than what you were. You show us that suffering and growth are connected. The Universal Cleanser was beginning to collapse as its crystal structure became unstable. But instead of exploding, it was transforming. Parts of it were becoming organic, developing root-like extensions that reached out toward nearby ships. Other sections were melting and reforming into new shapes that resembled flowers more than weapons. Around the construct, Kethmori ships were undergoing similar changes. Some dissolved completely, their crews choosing to return to the basic organic compounds from which they had originally evolved. Others became hybrid beings, part crystal and part flesh, finding a balance between perfection and chaos. But not all of the Kethmori accepted this transformation. A faction of the Crystal Empire, led by commanders who had forgotten their organic origins completely, chose destruction over change. Impurities must be eliminated, their transmissions declared. The perfect order cannot be corrupted by organic chaos. All life must end. These hardline Kethmori activated the Universal Cleanser's self-destruction sequence. If they could not use it to cleanse the galaxy, they would destroy it, rather than let it become contaminated with organic elements. Minho realized he had, only minutes before the weapon exploded with enough force to destroy everything within 100 light-years. His ship was too close to escape, and the explosion would kill millions of humans and aliens fighting in the surrounding space. "Mom," he said into his personal communicator, knowing Dr. Mi-young would be monitoring from a safe distance. "I'm sorry, but the Song of Ending needs to be completed from inside the construct. Someone has to stay." "Minho, no. There has to be another way." "There isn't. But Mom, I don't think I'm going to die. I think I'm going to become something new." He piloted the Silent Thunder directly into the heart of the transforming construct. The ship passed through layers of crystal that were becoming increasingly organic until it reached a vast chamber at the center. Here the Kethmori Overmind waited for him. The Overmind was no longer purely crystalline. Parts of it had developed organic components, structures that looked like neural networks made of living light. It was beautiful and terrifying, a hybrid consciousness that bridged the gap between mineral perfection and biological chaos. "Human," it said as Minho's ship entered the chamber, "you have shown us something we thought was lost forever. The possibility of change without destruction, growth without suffering, evolution without ending." "Nothing lasts forever," Minho replied. "That's what makes life precious." The plant beside him had grown during the journey, its roots now completely integrated with the ship's systems. Through it, Minho could feel the life force of every organic being in the galaxy. He could also sense the Kethmori who were choosing to return to biological existence, experiencing birth after eons of sterile immortality. "Will you help us?" the Overmind asked. "Our people are afraid. They have been crystals for so long they have forgotten how to live as organic beings. We need teachers." Minho thought of Gitayo and his plant, survivors who had adapted to impossible conditions and thrived. "Humanity will help, but you have to choose. We can't force you to live." Around them, the universal cleanser was tearing itself apart as different factions of Kethmori fought over its fate. The hardliners were trying to complete the self-destruction sequence while the moderates worked to transform the weapon into something that could nurture life instead of destroying it. Minho made his choice. He activated the final sequence of the Song of Ending, broadcasting it directly into the construct's core. The frequency was so powerful it began to break down the barriers between different forms of matter, allowing crystal and flesh to merge and separate at will. The explosion, when it came, was not the destructive force the hardliners had planned. Instead, it was a wave of transformative energy that spread outward at the speed of light, carrying the Song of Ending to every Kethmori ship and installation in the galaxy. Some crystal beings chose to let the wave dissolve them completely, preferring extinction to change. Others embraced the transformation, allowing their crystalline perfection to soften into organic flexibility. Many chose a middle path, becoming hybrid beings that combined the best aspects of both forms of existence. Captain Minho's ship was caught at the center of the transformation wave. He felt his body changing, becoming something that was neither purely human nor purely alien. The plant had grown to fill most of the ship's interior, its flowers now producing seeds that could survive in the vacuum of space. When the light faded, Minho found himself floating in a pod-like structure that was part of what had once been the universal cleanser. The construct had become a massive garden, its crystal halls now filled with growing things that combined organic and mineral elements in ways that defied classification. "Captain," came a voice through the pod's communication system. It was Admiral Hyunwoo Kim, broadcasting from the fleet that had survived the transformation. "What's your status?" Minho looked at his hands. They were still recognizably human, but they glowed with a soft inner light that reminded him of the plant's flowers. "I'm alive, Admiral. Changed, but alive. And I'm not alone." Through the pod's transparent walls, he could see other figures moving through the garden construct. Some were clearly former Kethmori, their crystal bodies now softened with organic elements. Others were humans who had been caught in the transformation wave and changed like he had been. All of them were working together, tending to the strange, hybrid plants that were beginning to grow throughout the structure. The war was over, but its ending was unlike anything anyone had expected. Instead of one species destroying the other, both had been transformed into something new. The galaxy now contained three kinds of intelligent beings: unchanged organics, who had been far from the transformation wave, unchanged crystals who had rejected the song of ending, and the new hybrid beings who represented a synthesis of both forms of life. Years passed. The hybrid garden that had once been the universal cleanser became a meeting place for all three types of beings. Scientists and philosophers from across the galaxy came to study the implications of the transformation. Some saw it as evolution in action. Others called it the birth of a new form of consciousness. Gitai, now an old man, made a pilgrimage to the garden with a cutting from his original plant. The small organism had spawned an entire ecosystem of hybrid flora that could survive in conditions no natural life could tolerate. When he arrived at the construct, he found Minho waiting for him. His old friend had changed dramatically. Minho's body was taller and more graceful than it had been, with skin that shifted between flesh and crystal depending on the light. His eyes held depths that spoke of experiences no purely human mind could contain. "Thank you for bringing her," Minho said, accepting the plant cutting. "She started all of this, you know. Her refusal to die on New Busan, her adaptation,